In today's episode with guest Justin Goff, how Justin escaped the productivity trap and works less than 6 hours a day while still making well over 7 figures a year, how Justin uses his quote hot chick privilege. This is the surprising lesson he's learned from his adventures in the dating market. Why business growth isn't necessarily the right goal. These are lessons learned from a $60 million a year business, and a simple trick to outsell any copywriter who is better than you. My name is Henry Bingaman. You're listening to Getting Out of the Machine. Hey everybody, welcome back to Getting Out of the Machine. My name's Henry Bingaman, and today I have my first guest, Mr. Justin Goff. Justin, how you doing?
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So just, a lot of people on the list will know who you are, but there's going to be plenty that don't too. So can you kind of just give me a background of where you grew up, how you got into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so my story, like a lot of copywriters, is I very much fell into copywriting and direct response. So basically when I was in college, I was a big poker player and a big sports bettor, and I was actually pretty good at it. And I paid my way through a good chunk of my college by doing that. And then I got really cocky and started betting more than than I was able to afford. Basically, I had what it was like the weekend from hell, where I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was like 7 football games I bet on, lost all of them. And this was like, I had increased my bet, like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 10x, like what I normally would bet on a game. So lost it all. And I basically was at this point where like I owed a bookie who was this 6'8", 280-pound guy named Gabe, like $1,200 that I did not have. And freaking out, trying to figure out how I'm going to make money. And I had always seen these websites, which I now understand it's called the tout business, where you sell sports picks for guys who bet on football and basketball games and stuff.
What's the name of it?
Tout, Tout.
Okay.
So it's a big industry around it. And I had this brilliant idea. I was like, oh, I could just make a website and sell my picks, and that'd be awesome. I'll make all this money back. It's completely naive to the fact that I had no idea how to make a website or how to get people to buy anything and shit like that. So I did that and created. This was like 2004-ish or somewhere in there. So this was like before WordPress, anything. So like the ugliest website you've ever seen in your life. Nobody bought anything. Obviously, I had no idea how to get traffic or how to actually sell anything. But I was like too stupid to quit. And I just basically was like spamming forums for the next 6 months, like trying to get traffic to my website. Honestly, never gave up, which is surprising when I look back at it now, because like I was just spending hours a day like writing posts on forums and spamming links and all this crap. But then like 6 months later, someone bought something, which was just shocking. I still remember that moment. I feel like that's like a huge moment for everyone. Like when you make your first sale, you're like, oh my God, like this is actually real. So that kind of got me into the arena, I guess, of like online marketing. From there, I kind of transitioned. I got into affiliate marketing. So I did a lot of stuff with that. This was during the big poker boom of the mid kind of 2000s. So I made a bunch of websites. I was pretty decent at SEO, and I was getting stuff to rank for like poker terms, like US poker websites and stuff like that. And I got to the point where I was making 8 to 10K a month doing that. That took me a couple of years to get there, but I mean, I got there eventually. And then what is called the Black Friday of poker, where basically everything the US government said you're no longer allowed to play online poker, happened, and everything I had basically got wiped out. So interestingly, around this time, I was working out with a trainer, and we were shooting all these ideas back and forth. And he was mentioning he always wanted to create a product to sell online. I was telling him that. So he was having me do the paleo diet, and we were doing kind of like CrossFit style workouts. This is probably 2008, 9-ish, somewhere in there. Way before that stuff was ever like really took off. And I was like, I feel like if we put this in an ebook, we could sell it, make a bunch of money. So came up with that idea. It was funny because he used direct response for his gym to get clients and stuff, and was like harping down my ear about this fucking dude named Dan Kennedy. And it was like, you got to study his stuff. You got to study it. And I just kept looking at it. I'm like, this is the ugliest, scammiest shit I've ever seen in my life. Nobody's ever going to buy anything from this. Eventually, after about a year and a half of trying to figure it out on our own and nothing really working, I finally had one of those like light bulb moments where I was like, there's got to be a reason why all these sales pages look like this. There's got to be a reason. Like, I don't think they work, but what we're doing is not working. And these people, I don't know any of them. I don't know if they're making sales, but why do they all look like this? So that was when I took he gave me this DVD, which was a Dan Kennedy uncut, unedited seminar DVD of like
the classic Dan Kennedy. Yeah.
20 straight hours of Dan just talking at an event. And it was a huge moment for me because I finally got it. I was like, okay, now I understand. I have at least some bearing of like what copy does, what it's supposed to do, how to actually sell. And that was kind of a big turning point because I would say over the next, him and I ended up parting ways, but over probably a year after that, I finally wrote my first sales letter that took off and actually worked on cold Facebook traffic to the point that I was able to scale it up to, I think it was doing about 100, 120 sales a day at its kind of max, which at the time to me was like life-changing money. I mean, I was one of those guys who would go around like I'd make like 30K one year, 40K the next year. And then I had a couple good years as an affiliate where I made like 100, but then I'd drop back down to like 40. It's kind of that big, like really feast and famine thing. But that year is when it really kind of blew up for me. And I think I made like 200K that year. And I was just like, okay, I can actually do this.
Yeah, we actually have a decent amount of overlap. I think we're about the same age. I turned 37 next month or in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm 38.
Yeah. So I was in that poker boom when I was in college too. I was making like $100-200 a week playing online poker. And then one day I decided to go for $1,000 tournament and lost and really could not have afforded to lose that. And then when I started, I was a flight attendant when I first got out of college because it was the only, I had a degree in fiction writing. There's not a lot of people hiring. But I got into the online stuff and I wrote a ebook called The Insider's Guide to Stress-Free Flying, which nobody fucking wanted that book. Like nobody cares about stress-free flying. But I did. I made 3 sales at $19 and it's like, oh, this is real. Like, nice. This is something you can do. And, I lost a couple $100 on that, but it got me into the copywriting world. So yeah, I feel like that is funny. We have to overlap there.
That's funny.
So the purpose, the reason I launched this whole podcast is the thing I'm trying to help people do is increase the amount of freedom in their own life. And, so a lot of that is entrepreneurship and copywriting is a big part of that. But a lot of copywriters and entrepreneurs fall into the trap of they build their own prison, basically, which I feel like is something you've talked about in some of your emails where you were working at. It was Patriot Power Greens. What was the name of that company where you were selling?
Yeah, Patriot Health Alliance with supplements.
Yeah. So, you built this up and just like me, I was working, 70-hour weeks in the beginning of copywriting and I was miserable doing it. I didn't have any actual, I was making all this money. I got to $100,000 my third year in business. And then I went back to 30,000 the next year, which is kind of another funny overlap. And I still spent 100, which don't recommend. But even you think about somebody, I was just watching Elon Musk on the All In podcast and the dude's worth, he's the richest man in the world. He owns 3 businesses, but he doesn't have a minute of free time. So I kind of want to ask, you sold your stake in the Patriot Alliance and kind of retired for a year, but then you started Copy Accelerator and some other businesses. How do you kind of set up your new life so that you're not falling into that same old trap where you're working 90-hour weeks?
It's been a transition. Yeah, because I was like a lot of people where I felt like every minute had to be productive. So like if I got done working at 7 or 8 o'clock at night and I wanted to watch TV for an hour, I wanted to watch like a basketball game, I would force myself to read a copywriting book while I'm watching the game to convince myself that I'm doing something productive. And I always had, for a while, I basically had that mentality for a long time where it was just like work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I wasn't taking Saturday and Sundays off. The one thing I've noticed with a lot of people is you can get away with that, especially in your 20s and kind of into your like mid 30s. And everyone I know who has done that hits a point kind of mid 30s, maybe early 40s, where they just absolutely crash into a wall and you just can't press the gas to the pedal. Like, you can't press the pedal any harder. And it's usually you fall apart in spectacular fashion. I've just seen it with so many friends who are entrepreneurs. I think part of it is I mean, part of it, it's like a double-edged sword because it's part of it. That's kind of what made you successful is you just have this inherent drive and need to make a bunch of money or be successful or have the freedom that you want that not everyone has. But then on the other hand, there is, you can go too far. Like we kind of talked about with Elon. So, I mean, for me, it's been really big with understanding you don't have to be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to be successful. And then be really setting like clear boundaries on my time and kind of really understanding that if you do go too far, like it's not actually good. Like I tend to actually operate better and get more stuff done when I'm more at 5-6 hours a day and at least taking one full day off a week. And then something I've implemented in the last 2 years has been 3 actual vacations of like 7 days each with no work. So no email, no Slack, not like just complete.
Yeah, it's funny. That's hard to do. Everybody's always trying to contact you. Like people don't want to let you take time off. It's one of the interesting things about, being an entrepreneur is you attract these people to you that always want to be time vampires. And you really, we both work with Brent Charlton. And one of the things that has been so big with me and him is literally setting boundaries. Like it's okay to not answer the phone for these people. Sometimes, it doesn't hurt your business as much as you think it's going to.
It doesn't hurt at all.
Right.
In fact, you're shocked when you get back and no one fucking missed you and no one you realize like you're really not as important as you think you are. But yeah, for me, I remember the first time I did that same kind of thing where I was just like completely freaking out, took a vacation. I was like, everything's going to fall apart without me. I know. So I had my assistant literally checking my email every day and then texting me daily just to make sure. She's like, yes, everything's fine, nothing's going on. Like that was kind of eye-opening to me where I was like, okay, I can actually do this. I can take time off, take time away, just put up a autoresponder on my email that, hey, Justin's not here for June 7th to June 14th. If it's super important, send it when I get back. That is a big leap for a lot of entrepreneurs to be able to kind of put that in place. But that has kind of come with, like we said, with like setting boundaries around my time. Like I'm pretty good at, I'm done. My computer usually gets shut every day by 6. And I would say usually by 4 because I usually go to the gym around 4. But like I used to be one of those guys where it's like if I had the free 30 minutes or I had an hour and I didn't have anything to do, it's like, am I going to watch TV or I'll just hop back on and I could finish up this piece of copy or change these ads or do whatever. Like, there's always more shit you could do.
Yeah, not just as a copywriter, as any kind of business owner. There's a never ending list of things you could be doing. So you have to be able to set those boundaries or you're going to sit at your computer all day. And that's just a miserable life. It was really interesting. I moved out of the city in 2020. I bought 15 acres in the mountains. Every night I go hiking or snowboarding or whatever the season allows. And it's amazing that people don't care if you don't get them back to them until the next morning. Like once you start putting those boundaries up, like you can have a much more enjoyable life and people won't be mad at you for it. It was I just assumed that my clients would be pissed or, the customers would go away, but no, they'll wait there. They'll wait till tomorrow.
This is something I've actually learned a lot from dating, especially from like very attractive women. If you like hang out with them and look at their phone, it's like, oh yeah, I gotta get back to that person. Like they haven't got back to that person in like 3 days, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll get back to them. It's kind of helped me. Similar like Brent, him and I have talked about the same stuff where it's like, I was the same way. Like if I was in the middle of something, somebody pinged me, like I got back and was like texting them back. I now am at the point where, yeah, I feel completely fine just getting back to someone the next day or 2 days later if it's not that important. I kind of almost have, I feel like my text wise, I have kind of in a hierarchy. There's a first level that will probably always get a response that day. But then there's kind of other levels where it's like, okay, I'll hit you back in 2 days or 3 days, especially if I have a lot going on. Because I feel like between text, my email lately has gotten out of control to the point where I used to respond to everything. Now I don't know. I mean, 50 to 100 a day that require my response. And it's like, yeah, okay.
There's no way. It's just not.
No.
It's not feasible. I actually like the way it's kind of the call it hot chick privilege, where if you're texting a hot chick, yeah, you're not gonna be mad if she gets back to you 3 days later. And it's, when you set up your business well enough, you kind of get that same, like, no, if they want to talk to you bad enough, they'll wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, we have this idea that like you have to get back right away. And it's like I said, between text, email, Instagram messages I get, Facebook messages I get, if I literally just responded to them all as soon as possible, it would,
It's a full-time job.
literally not get one thing done in my business. That would be my whole day. And that obviously increases, as you said, like the more successful you are, the more successful your business is, that tends to increase. Like I feel like mine in the last year or two has really increased and picked up. But yeah, getting good about the boundaries on that has been kind of game changing for me.
Yeah. So you were just talking about the business. One of the things that I found interesting, just being on your email list the past couple of years or a few years, how long have you been doing that email list now?
2018, I started it. So almost 4 years now.
Yeah. I remember I was working with Mark Stockman at Natural Health Sherpa, and him and Jeff Radish started forwarding me your emails. I was like, oh, all right, this is interesting.
Nice.
But that's when I got on your list. But one of the things you've talked about a lot, you built a $23 million company is what you got that up to before you sold. But right now you talk about your income pretty openly, which is, less bashful than I would be, I guess. But you don't mind, like, you're not trying to get to $10 million a year. Like your personal income, you've kind of settled at that 1.5 or something, I think you've talked about. So how did you, because a lot of entrepreneurs can't get to that place in their head, right? They're on the treadmill. They're going for the 10, 20, $30 million businesses, and it doesn't matter how many hours they work. So how did you kind of, I guess, make peace and make that decision that you're wanting that work-life balance, and it's okay to stop working? Like, how did you get there?
I'm just laughing at the idea of like making peace with only making $1.5 million.
I know it's ridiculous to say, but when you get to a certain point, it's like you and I both know that we could work more hours and make more money, but at a certain point, it's just not worth it.
So a lot of that actually came from some of the work with Brent. He asked me very bluntly once when we were talking about how much I wanted to make, and I can't remember what I said. I was somewhere between like $1 million and $2 million. And he was just like, okay, well, like, why do you want to make that much? And I had no answer for him. I was like, I don't know. Like, it's just like, it sounded good. I had a very similar thing back in the day. I remember I was like, I really, like, my goal was like, I wanted to be the best copywriter in the world, and I wanted to be known as the best copywriter in the world. This is probably like 2015 or so. I was very intent on that. I remember I don't honestly remember who it was I was talking to. And he was like, he's like, basically like drilling down with it. And he's like, would you rather be the best copywriter in the world, or would you rather make $5 million a year? And I was like, I would rather make $5 million a year. And he's like, so like, it kind of made me just see like the bullshit I had in my head, like, and how much it was just like ego of like, I wanted to be known as the best copywriter in the world. And I feel like I've gotten to a place now where I'm better at just going after what I actually want. And that kind of, I feel like, ties in with what you're saying with like, okay, do I want to make 5 million? Do I want to make 10 million? And I've kind of like run the numbers, and like for someone like me, like I tend to make somewhere around 1.5 million a year. For that, I live actually pretty like modestly for that. I mean, I probably have 200 to 300 grand in expenses a year. Obviously I have like some business expenses and then taxes and stuff like that, but I'm not like spending a boatload of money flying private, all kinds of shit like that. And I actually don't feel like I'm missing anything. Like there's not anything if I got to 10 million a year that I'd be able to do that like I'm not doing now. So that was kind of a big realization for me. And like, okay, yeah, it would be great. If I could do the same amount of work I'm doing now and make 10 instead of 1.5, great. Yes, obviously I would take it. I'm not gonna say no to it, but chasing that, it just doesn't feel as important to me anymore. I don't know if this is partly just because of like my age too, where when I was 25, it was just like, all I care about is money, and I want to make more money, and I don't care what I have to sacrifice to get it. And then I would say the other thing, I kind of hit it a level with Patriot Health Alliance where I think my best year I made like 2.2 million, and it was probably the most miserable I'd ever been. Like I was just working nonstop. I was not very passionate about what we were doing. Like all of our customers, I mean, it was just like they were just names on an email list. Like I didn't actually like know who they were. I didn't know like what the fuck we were actually kind of impact we were having. Even though like a lot of our supplements like people loved and like would write us these great stories about, like it wasn't that fulfilling for me. So that was like one of the reasons I ended up selling it too. But I see that like with my new business, I actually make a little bit less now than what I did back then, but it's 10 times more fulfilling for me. So like if I'm helping like a copywriter and they were working in a mall 2 years ago and now they're making 8K a month writing copy from home, and they're able to send their kid to a better school and their wife is all happy because she doesn't have to work anymore. Like that's way more fulfilling and satisfying for me now. So for me, like that has definitely shifted a little bit, where I was just straight kind of money focused, willing to sacrifice everything more in my 20s. And now I'm like, yeah, I see the bigger picture a little better. I'm sure I'm sure I still have a ton of blind spots to what's going on, but I feel like I have a better idea of what's going on and like what I actually want.
Hey guys, it's Henry cutting in really quick. If you're enjoying this episode, I have another video I think you'll really love, especially if you're interested in copywriting. In 2019, the legendary copywriter Clayton Makepeace invited me to speak at his financial copywriting intensive. And he wanted me to talk about how I come up with my big ideas for copywriting promotions. So I boiled the process down to just 8 steps, 8 questions really, to ask yourself to take a weak idea and turn it into a monster that does $1 million, $10 million, or even $100 million in revenue. You can get that talk by going to henryb.co/idea. Once you sign up for my email list, you'll get that talk and a whole lot more goodies. Again, that's henryb.co/idea. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, I was actually in a very similar position. I think 2018 was my best year ever, and I hit 1.4 million in income. But I did that off the back of a John Boehner promotion on cannabis. And I'm a big believer in cannabis businesses, but John Boehner, he was pro prohibition, I guess you would say, for his entire career, and then he got $100 million check to go join a cannabis firm, and and I was helping promote that dude, and like. It was a good promotion, that thing, it broke the Agora sales records and all that stuff. But it was at the end of the day, you're like, what did I just sell myself? I was working 60 hours a week. You're going through his compliance team, Agora's compliance team. I was getting to bed at like 3 a.m. and like having to take a shot just so I could go to sleep. And you're like, this is not worth it, man. You gotta, at some point you have to do something that actually means something to somebody. Like and I think that's where you've gotten in your business, is where I'm like transitioning toward. And it's funny, I had the same conversation with Brent about what's the absolute minimum number you want to make and like maintain your lifestyle. And we got me down to 300,000. And I'm wow. If I make 300,000, my life doesn't change. I own my house outright. I own the cars. It's like, what do I need this money for? And there's no way I'm not going to make 300,000. So it's like, it's just a very freeing feeling when you realize, you have a certain skill set, but you don't have to apply it nonstop every day and kill yourself to do it. It's a very freeing feeling.
I mean, it's the same way too with like running a business. I wrote an email about this, how it turns into such like a dick measuring contest with like people in our kind of arena, where it's like, I know there's one guy I specifically know who he has about a $60 million business now. And we were talking at one point and he was very candid with me. And he's like, I was so much happier when we had a $20 million business. He's like, I was making pretty similar profit. He's like, I'm not making that much more now. He's like, I had so much less to manage, way less stress, way less headaches. And he's like, it isn't what I thought it was going to be, having a business that's 3 times the size. That was pretty eye-opening for me, because we get in all these talks with like, oh yeah, this guy's doing 100 million, this guy's doing 50 million. And it's like, all that really matters is what they're taking home, and what does that actually matter to them? Because like you said, 300 grand, there's certain people who are like, if I can make 100 grand, if I can make 70 grand, I'd be super happy. So I mean, there's not one like thing that fits for everyone.
Oh man, there's people that live in the Philippines, make 80 grand a year, and their expenses are like 5 grand a year. Like they're technically richer than me, like not on paper, but like their lifestyle. If you only have to work 2 hours a week and you have 90% profit margin, like, yeah, you're richer than me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it just doesn't really make any sense to me, at least at this point, where it's like, as you said, how much more do you want to push? How much more do you want to like put time in, stress yourself? Because there's always a trade off. That's the thing. Like, it's like if you're going to go all in and put in more time, more hours, whatever it is to try to double the size of your company, is that going to be actually really worth it for you in the end? Because like I said, with my buddy, tripled the size of his company, but he's like, I don't know, for whatever the extra amount of money he's making a year now, he's like, it's 100% not worth it. And he's like, I'd go back to the other size in a heartbeat.
And how do you unwind yourself from that? Once you get there, you're in a trap.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't have any good advice for him. I was just
no, I know it's tough, but I mean that's I just left Agora. I was making $1 million on average there. I'm just unwinding from. Sometimes you just have to walk away, and it's a tough thing to do. It's a hard decision to reach, but you did the same thing with your supplement company. Sometimes you got to walk away and restart.
So interesting when that happened. So I had the offer on the table for my partner to buy me out, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. And so I talked to 4 different guys who had sold their company. And I was like, all right, I want to figure out like what this is like, mistakes they made, what should I do? And I talked to all these 4 guys. They sold their stuff for way more money than I did. But their advice, the one thing that was in common through all 4 of them was either I'm super appreciative of the time that I took off after I sold it, or I wish I would have took more time off. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I had this whole freaking business plan ready for day one of basically kind of doing what I'm doing now with like coaching and stuff like that with copywriters. That was all literally already done and in the works. And I was like, I'm going to start this the day the ink is dry on this contract and I get my buyout. And it was really freaking hard for me to take a year off. I would say the first 6 weeks. So basically they said take 6 months off minimum. If you can afford to take a year, do a year. I'm like, all right, the first 6 weeks were fucking torture. Like I woke up at the same time. I just go like straight to my computer and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be here, like flapping away at the keys. It took me about 6 weeks to get over the guilt of like feeling like I have to be working, I have to be doing something. Then I kind of really relaxed into it and just like enjoyed getting up at 9:30, and then me and my dogs would go to the park for an hour and a half, and I would just sit there and not have any like hurry to get back. Or I'd meet a buddy for lunch and we'd have like a 2-hour lunch and I didn't feel like guilty about it. Or I'd spend 2 hours at the gym and just like, all right. It was great. But it was funny because about a year into it, probably about 9 months into it, I started to realize why people get bored in retirement, where I was like, like I always wanted to do stuff and it's like, but all my friends are working. So it's kind of like hard to find stuff to do. But then after about a year, I'm such like a marketing nerd anyways. Like I started to get the itch to do stuff again. And that's why I started my email list actually with like not really any idea of what it was going to become or if I was actually going to sell stuff. I was just like, I love writing about marketing. I love writing about copy. I'm just going to write this for 100, 200 people that I know that would like to hear about it. So I kind of all started organically. And then I guess also organically turned into me doing kind of coaching and stuff like that.
So actually, I want to talk a little bit about copywriting. Do you know Scott Adams' whole concept of the skill stack? I think he calls it. Where
I do not.
Yeah. So he says, Scott Adams is the creator of Dilbert, and he talks about his skill stack, and it's not that he's the best animator, it's not that he's the best writer, and it's not that he's the best humorist, but he's pretty good at all 3 of them. And when you stack them together, he created a $1 billion empire or whatever he has for himself with Dilbert. So kind of along those lines, neither of us are actually the best writer in the world. I don't mean to insult you by that, but like,
no, I very much understand. I'm not the
best. What would you identify as like the 2 or 3 things that you put together to kind of get your career to where it is? Because I mean, not everybody can just start up a business or start up an email list and build a multi-million-dollar business out of it like you did. So what kind of, if you had to describe your skill stack, what would you think would be in it?
So I actually would categorize myself as a good copywriter, but a much better marketer. Like I really like, even in the Patriot Health Alliance business, I really kind of thrived in the stuff with like average order value and really building up the rest of the funnel and back end stuff. And that's where I was actually much, much better at than like I was just pure kind of copywriter. I've always kind of seen that. Like, I feel like Dan Kennedy's the same way. Like Dan, no one would look at Dan's writing and be like, oh, he's better than Gary Bencivenga or David Deutsch or Stefan or whoever. He's not, but he's probably a better marketer and understands the intricacies of marketing better than pretty much everyone, especially in kind of direct response. So I feel like I'm kind of more like that. And I really, one of the things that was great about running my own business compared to just doing stuff freelance, I got to see the whole thing. I got to see the whole picture of like how everything really works and how all the money's really made on the back end and how the front end's really just about customer acquisition. That's kind of stuff that, like, I mean, I know copywriters who make 200 grand a year, 300 grand a year and still don't really get any of that. Like they don't understand the totality of how the machine kind of works. So I would say like that for me. And I would say secondly, I got really damn good at, I mean, and this is the most boring part and everybody always skips it, but like really damn good at understanding the intricacies of who the buyer is, to a point that, like, if you read some of my like documents that I have now on who our kind of Copy Accelerator members are, like some of it's like freaky how like in depth and deep it. I actually use a lot of stuff that I learned from Brent, with like the lenses that they see copy through and kind of how they relate to their career and copy. And I use that a ton now too. But to me, that's like the one thing where it's like, as a copywriter, you can beat copywriters that are much better than you by simply understanding the customer better than they do.
Yeah, there's actually, I don't talk about it a lot, but one of, I think, the biggest advantages I ever had. So I was kind of a copy cub, I guess you'd call it, for Jed Canty, who's easily one of the best.
Badass.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best copywriters ever to play the game. He was doing $100 million a year in sales for Newsmax back in the day. He invented the actual like real video. Like we talk about John Benson's VSL, Jed was doing actual full production video that people didn't even know were ads. They thought they were news programs that they were then buying books off of at the end of them. But so I was apprenticed with him, and we started a company when I was still 2 or 3 years into copywriting called Insider Fortunes. We tried to start our own financial publishing company. And I was doing, Jed was off writing big copy for Money Map and Agora at the time. So I was left to run that business on my own. And I was doing the ad buys for Newsmax. I was doing every single part of it, from, ad buys to fulfillment. And you get such a good, I don't know, it's like a baptism by fire learning to run a company like that. But I think that's really where I learned to write financial copy. It's not so much the copywriting. It is getting to know your customer. It's knowing what the right, desires to tap into are, but it's also, if you know those little details, you can do so much better as a copywriter than somebody who just spends time focused on the writing part.
Yeah, 100%. It's very obvious too, like, and that's what a lot of them are looking for now. Like a lot of the copy jobs that are coming into like our program, and people are looking to hire, it's like, yeah, I want somebody who understands copy, but I also want someone who understands the upsells and AOV and kind of how the ads on the front end affect that. Being a little more full-blown marketer than just pure copywriter.
Yeah, some of the best lessons I ever learned were when I was a creative director for Natural Health Sherpa, which is now Metabolic Living, and just watching Mark Stockman work. The dude just knows what he's doing. And the amount of effort that went into every little detail. Now, I think he's too much of a perfectionist, but no denying the business he built. And he's one of the smartest marketers out there. So yeah, getting up close with the marketing it's I hate to say it as a copywriter, but it's more important than the copywriting.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. Yeah, I mean, they go hand in hand, because it's like, there are people who they're like, oh, copywriting is not that important anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, look at every great offer out there. Like, without good copy, it's not fucking working. But yeah, being able to do, because that's the thing, how much it's changed though. Because like going back to what I was talking about, that first video, the first sales letter I ever wrote, 2010, that thing was scaling on cold traffic with no upsells, no back end.
How did you make it work with no back end?
I was spending like $5,000 a day on Facebook ads and making like $7,000 a day. So that
And
was
that's pretty remarkable to do with no upsell. Like that's
that was
a pretty freaking good sales letter.
it. But there was also like that was Facebook ads were super cheap at the
Yeah.
time. It was 2010. I got really good at the front end ads. So I was getting them down to like, I don't know, 14, 15 cents a click. And then but this goes back to understanding the whole thing. Cause I literally thought that's how you were supposed to make money as a direct response marketer. I didn't realize you're supposed to just get them on the list and that's where you make all the money. You sell them other stuff. I thought it was all made on the front end. Like I wrote an offer after, this is so embarrassing to talk about. I wrote an offer after that one that broke even the first day we put it out. And we ended up like shutting it down because I was like, oh, it's not a winner. Like,
meanwhile, Agora and all the big clients I work with, they're at like 40, 50%,
right.
ROI on day one. Like you're looking at your 60-day ROI to measure your sales buys, your ad buys. That's right. You shut down a winner. That hurts.
Yeah. That was a lesson when I finally like realized later on, and I was like, oh, you put it out. And then you tweak the angles, the headlines, the email creatives, whatever, everything leading to it. Then when you finally dial it in, get the upsells dialed in. Okay, that's how an actual great offer is constructed. Like I've had one offer, Patriot Power Greens. That was the only one I ever wrote that was just the absolute home. As soon as we put it out, like the first ad buy we did, it had like a 5X on it. And we're just like, I thought something was broke with the stats. I'm like, this can't be right. And then we did another one like a week later, another email drop with like Newsmax and the exact same results. And I was just like, oh my Lord, like we hit a home run.
Yeah, it's great when you tap into that right vein and it just
blows up. But that's not normal.
No, it's not normal, but you'll get a couple over your career. That's what I did with the John Boehner one, where we did 10,000 sales in the first day. You're just like, people are into it. All right. So I want to kind of switch to investing, if you don't mind talking about it, because it's one skill to learn how to make money. It's another skill to learn how to keep it. And, if you're going to design your lifestyle, investing becomes a big part of it. So can you kind of talk about, I know we've talked about crypto offline a little bit. Can you kind of talk about how you view investing, I guess, as an overall thesis?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little background. So I grew up in Sandusky, Ohio, which is this really small town near Cleveland. Where typical small town mentality is you take your money and you put it in a bank. No one like understands investing, you put your money in the stock market. Like it's the same thing as like going to a casino. That's kind of like how my family thought growing up. So I never invested anything for a long time until basically when I got my buyout. That was when I was like, all right, I'm getting a couple $1 million here. I need to figure out how to not fuck this up. Like, yeah, I know just keeping it in a bank account is not the right thing. I also know like trying to pick stocks is like pretty hard. So I went to Amazon and read a ton of books. Like biggest one that probably had the most influence on me was John Bogle's Common Sense Investing Guide, which he's basically, if people don't know him, he was the founder of Vanguard and basically is just the big proprietor of stick your money in an index fund. It just mimics the market, gets your 9 to 10% return every year. And you're going to beat 95% of investors simply doing that. And over the course of 30 years, it all made so much sense to me. I was like, yeah, he's right. Cause like, I don't know how to pick stocks, and all these people that do, even the ones that are great, like you could have a run for 5 years. You could have a run for 10 years, but there's like 2 or 3 people that have been able to do it over like a 40-year period and consistently do it over and over again. It's kind of funny because like you think about it, it's like none of your buddies think they'd be able to beat like LeBron James one-on-one, but people like think they could do the same thing like Warren Buffett does. And it's like, no, he's an enigma. Like you're not going to be able to do that. So anyways, that was kind of what I started with. I started with a super basic, like 70-30 portfolio of stocks to bonds. I started with that. And then I realized pretty quickly, I would say over the last 5 years, I realized I do have more risk tolerance than I thought I did at first. So like I've gotten out of all the bonds and I'm basically just 100% stocks. And then I've gotten about 20% into crypto. And I got in when it started running up in December of 2019. So that was like when it
Early.
kind of made that run up. And I think I got it in like Bitcoin around 20 or so. ETH was like 600 at the time. I wish I would just put it all in then because I'd be up a lot more. But and I've also realized crypto will teach you very quickly what your risk tolerance is because when you have the negative 30 days, a 30% drop in a day, like it's kind of normal now. Like it happens 3 or 4 or 5 times a year. And I'm just like, kind of immune to it at this point. But I'm also, I realized like I'm a big believer in crypto and I feel like I wish I could be one of those people who could put all of his money into Bitcoin. But I just know like I'd be the type where like with the crash that's going on now, like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Yeah. So getting that idea of like where you're actually at, I think is super important. So my overall right now is like 80% index funds, about 20% crypto. And then for someone who's in a business, this is something I've really been thinking a lot of, I would say over the last year, where I would just automatically keep putting money into my index funds or putting it into crypto. And last summer, I had a realization. I was like, every time I add more people to my email list, I make a boatload of money. And I'm like, why am I not looking at that as investing? Why am I not taking that 50K that I was going to put into an index fund and go pay affiliates to build my email list up? And I did that last summer, and I think my email list went from about 3,000 people to about 9,000. And of the people I've tracked from that, within like 3 months, it was like a 3.5x ROI. And that was just within like 3 months. That's not even, I haven't even tracked it this year. So it's probably up to 6, 7, whatever. And that made me kind of really change a lot of my thoughts where I was like, okay, like, yeah, I get the tax write-off if I put it through my solo 401k and put it into my Vanguard account, but the actual ROI here is 7 times better in my putting it into my business to buy more leads. Like, why the hell wouldn't I just keep doing this?
Yeah, I had the same realization at one point when I was talking to my financial tax advisors, whatever we want to call them. Oh, actually, the guys you introduced me to at ARC.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, they were. Jonathan was like, well, you don't have to really worry about investing when your income is this high. Like at a certain point, like your biggest ROI is your business right now. Like when we start getting to retirement, we can talk about some of these other things. And obviously I do some investing, but it's like, yeah, your biggest ROI is always going to be your business until you stop working. So don't stress over this other stuff. And I do own crypto. Like I had a conversation with Nick Black. You know who that is? He's a big crypto bro. He works with Money Map. But yeah, I talked to him for 2.5 hours one time. And at the end of that call, I went on and bought 6 figures worth of crypto. I was like, oh, nice. All right. I've been missing out. I need to get in on it. I originally bought Bitcoin at 7,000 and then I sold it at 25, thinking I was a genius. I was like, I could have had a whole Bitcoin from 7,000 up. And I bought it back, but it's at a much higher price.
Nice.
But yeah, people always talk about crypto or as a hedge against inflation. I'm just like, it's not. It's a speculative investment. Like you have to have again, folks, this is not investment advice, anything we're saying here. Do your own research, blah, blah, blah. But it's, it's not going to track inflation ever. It's either going to be, 5,000 times better than inflation or it's going to zero.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm at the point where I just keep it at 15, 20% of my portfolio. And I'm like, I'd look at it as an asymmetric bet. Like if it crushes, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm not going to be out on the street panhandling because I lost all my money. One other thing I'll add is I feel like if anybody's watching this who's kind of like newer, and this is something I wish I would have learned a lot younger, is putting money into stock market, real estate, crypto, whatever, is really, really dumb if you don't have a higher income yet. If you're not at the income level you want yet, you should be spending that money on learning skills that could get your income up. Because if you make 50K a year and I make 200K a year, it doesn't matter how good you are at investing. I'm going to have more money than you, barring me having a coke habit or being a fucking idiot with my money. But a lot of people will just do this where it's like, okay, they're making 40K a year, 50K a year, and they're at a job where they're only going to get a mediocre raise, or they're going from 50 to 55 to 60 to what, like that's it. It's like you'd be much better off putting that money into figuring out some type of skill that you could get. Okay, how do I get to 100K a year? How do I get to 125? How do I get to 200? Because that, when you really look at it, it's like the biggest correlator between wealth, between having a high net worth, is having a high income. Like, it's not, I mean, yeah, you can get lucky and be one of the people who got in on Dogecoin when it was super cheap and make a bunch of money. But for the large majority of people, it's a higher income. So like, I always say this with people, and people are always skeptical of it when I talk about it in regards to like a coaching program, because they're like, well, yeah, no shit, you're selling coaching. Like, but I'm like, I would tell you the exact same thing if you were asking about going to one of my competitors to go get coaching. I'd be like, yeah, if you want to put $5,000 into something, if you're asking me to put $5,000 into an index fund or $5,000 into coaching to get better at copywriting, I would 100% tell you to learn, as long as you learn from someone who knows what they're doing. I would 100% tell you to do that, because the odds of you getting better at copywriting and doubling your income are way better than you putting that $5,000 into an index fund and getting that same return.
Well, the other thing I tell people is, in a recession, which everybody says we're entering a recession, which we'll see in the next couple of months whether that's true. But the value of your index fund goes down in a recession, but the value of your marketing skills, your copywriting skills goes up in a recession because people need to sell more. So it's like the only recession proof. Like, if you invest in yourself, it's the only thing that goes up. Having your skills is the only thing that goes up during recession. So yeah, absolutely. It's worth investing in yourself first.
Yeah. 100%. And that, like I said, that was something that took me a long time, because I was super stubborn. Like, when I got into copywriting, I was like, I don't need anybody's help. I'm gonna figure this out on my own. I honestly like looked at people who got coaches and stuff and like thought they were like weak, literally. Like, that was the way I looked at it. Like, I'm doing it on my own. I don't need help. It was a really terrible way to look at things. But I'm the same way though now, where it's like, so like Steph and my partner and I, one of the things we're doing right now is we've grown our coaching program to like 200 members. We want to get it to 400 or 600 members. Well, neither of us have ever grown a coaching program there, so we don't know all the crap that we're going to run into that's going to prevent us from getting there. So we're seeking out someone right now. Like, we'd be glad to pay you 50, 100K to teach us all the steps we need to do and all the landmines that are going to come up along the way and all the stuff that you kind of wish you did to get to 600 members. So same thing, we're just investing in ourselves to get that knowledge to basically get a shortcut and kind of a blueprint on how we're going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant advice. So I know we're running out of time a little bit. Where can we point people to keep up with you, Copy Accelerator, your email list? Where can we point people?
Yeah, man. So I have an email list where I write pretty much a daily email. If you go to justingofflist.com, you can get on it there. There's a little like application, you get on the list. I write pretty much every day about marketing, copy, stuff that's going on in my life, all that fun stuff. Big believer in freedom and doing your own thing and getting away from the 9 to 5. So a lot of what I talk,
getting out of the machine. Come on.
Getting out of the machine. Yes. A lot of what I talk about is definitely around that. So if you're into that stuff, I think you'll enjoy my emails.
And I highly co-sign it. It's one of the only emails I open every day.
Thanks,
Justin,
man.
I have one more question. If I can ask it for just the people that are signed up to my email list. You got time for that? All right.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I think this was a pretty good one.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. We'll talk later. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.